Okay, going live. I think we're good. Okay, awesome. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Bali. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. Good. Thank you.
Lovely. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Joud. As most of you guys are familiar, and I'm so glad you guys from Cyncly can join us as well today. So for this webinar, we started a little bit early, right? And because I wanted to maybe get a little bit of an icebreaker going on for a couple of minutes, just to wait for people to join in because this session is going to be very interesting. Um, so Daniel, Bali, I have a question for you guys and everyone in the audience as well. You guys can join. Uh, Right, if user guiding could make you a guide for everyday life, which would you pick? So we have like some options here and there. Let me try to fix this. Yes. So if you want, you can do like it can help you with how to do your taxes before crying, like without crying. If you can cook a three-course meal in 20 minutes, or surviving Monday morning, navigating IKEA without getting lost. Um, so these are like the typical, especially like nowadays with like the AI kind of automating everything. Um, so you can, if you were to implement user guiding in something that you can do on a daily basis, which one would you guys choose?
So I think I would pick the cooking a meal in 20 minutes because I know how much my wife would thank me for that. Because that's not something I can do now in maybe 40 minutes or 50 minutes. So that would be great help.
Yeah.
I mean, if it told you what to cook and got your ingredients in as well, even better.
Yeah. That would be a type of like guide, right? So it would tell you like, or like a checklist, like, okay, you can get this and then do this and then do that. That's interesting. I like the one about like maybe like how to do like the taxes because I dread that. Like I don't mind the cooking part, but whenever I don't know when tax season is for you guys. Is it also like
Yeah,
February?
April time is always the time to avoid, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like this tab in the back of your mind. It's like, oh man, I gotta do this taxes stuff.
But mine's got to be IKEA because IKEA is massive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I don't know. I think there was like some. There's a reason why they've designed it this way, where you would have to go into all the aisles and check all the little, uh, you know, nooks and crannies here and there. So this way, you'll always, and even though if you just wanted the Swedish meatballs, you have to go through everything and see all of that. So
And resist it.
for sure. I mean, I think we already got some polls going on, and people are saying also they agree with the cooking a three-course meal in 20 minutes. So that's amazing. Lovely. Okay, I mean, uh, to kick things off, first of all, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience with how you guys have been using user guiding, and I'm so excited to get into the details of it. So to kick things off, if you both of you could introduce yourselves, your roles at Cyncly, and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, sure. I'll start if you like. So at Cyncly, we're concerned with software in the spaces for living industry. So a lot of what Bali, me, and the rest of our documentation team are doing is working with software for retailers who are doing designs for kitchens or bathrooms or other spaces, which we'll come on to talk about when we look at the software. So I've been managing our documentation team for 5 years now. So we were set up to centralize the effort of documentation. So we took work away from the support team to support them and from the product team to look at new features and new releases. So we've centralized all of that. And a typical day would look at us writing articles, making content, doing screen recording, creating videos, and then also doing lots and lots of translation because we've got products in lots of countries across the globe. And that's a big part of our work, but I won't tread on Bali's toes because she spends even more time than I do doing all of that work.
Yeah, so Sandhu. I work in the documentation team and I document for about 4 different design products, all in the kitchen industry. And like Don said, we have support centres, so we have document in articles, and we use user guiding as well now on the web-based platform Flex.
Amazing. Usually, most of our users, I would say, are more of like in the product management side or like customer success. But it's very interesting to see that your team or your, yeah, like your, let's say, responsibilities in Cyncly is called documentation. So the documentation part, because you would think it's just like, like just providing documents or like FAQs, but from what you're explaining to me, it's a little bit more of, it's close to like product marketing where you want to provide that, like as you said, like documentation or support or materials to your users so they're able to, I guess, navigate the platforms, correct?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's probably more than just a coincidence that a lot of people, there are 8 in our team, and a lot of us came from doing customer support. So we were there doing frontline support on email and on telephone. So there's a lot of that plays into what we're doing. But you're right, we sit inside the product function in the company. So we support product and we support marketing and we support and we provide the trainers with some content, and it's sort of centralized in that way.
Do you contact the users directly, or do you work with teams and get that input for understanding, what kind of material you want to provide, or what kind of documentation or support? Yeah.
We in the team don't have very much direct customer
Mhm.
contact, so we're more getting information back from support. So, for example, a support person in our company could raise a ticket with us and say, "We've just read this article and it needs an update," or a customer has told us that this article needs an update, or there's a mistake, or there's an old screen, and we'll get a flow of information from the customer that way.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I like that because it's kind of, I guess, when you add more teams and, let's say, divide the responsibilities, it becomes more easier, for everyone to do their tasks or finish their goals in a more efficient way, and then like the responsibilities are more clear on who's responsible for what type. So yeah, that's very interesting, because usually for other teams as well as, of course, it depends on the size of the company, where documentation is a responsibility of a lot of people, like a lot of different teams. You would have like support and success and product and also that feedback going on. um, I mean, if you were to, just like for context, with regards to your industry and what you guys do at Syncly, if you had to describe Syncly in, like, your product in one sentence for someone new, how would you put it?
Oh, I think maybe we should both have a go at this.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a lot about our product called Flex, and that's where we're
Mm.
putting user guiding and all the tools you've got. So I would describe Flex as customer and project management with your design application. There we go. And I hope that anyone else from Cyncly who's watching thinks that was an okay definition. What do you think, Bali?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably bang on. It's kind of to help people that have got the actual design applications to manage their workflow, have their projects, and their databases in a central cloud-based product.
So you guys integrate with other platforms, and that's the main. That's how, I guess, the designers would use that, or like different. Right.
Designs.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah. So most of our users are working with end consumers, and they're doing kitchen or bathroom designs or other spaces. So over time, some of those products are really established. They're 20 years old, and we've been adding some cloud capabilities to them, and that's what Flex is doing. So we have
yeah.
that challenge of supporting and developing the old design application and keeping that new and current, and then coming on with the platform on top, which then gives you access to a lot of what you want to do in a web browser, which is why it's such a good fit to use a tool like user guiding at this point.
Yeah, no, that's great, because I'm also imagining that, for Flex especially, because the value that you provide is also kind of, you want your users to be like the most efficient, so they can provide the value as soon as possible in a very organized way. So you guys also have like lots of updates, I guess, or like, you have to stay on your toes for, and I'm guessing also you've maybe probably also started integrating some AI features as well, or
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let Bally speak about the number of updates because of the products that you look after. They're constantly updated, aren't they?
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
so at least once a quarter for all of the products. So.
Amazing. So let's rewind a little bit. So let's talk about like what you guys like how you got started with user guiding, and what challenges you were facing with, I guess, the onboarding and documentation part.
Yeah, so as I mentioned that we're all centralized and we're trying to put all of our resources to do this from a central location. One of those challenges was about onboarding customers. So we've got new customers who are completely new to Cyncly and all of our products, but maybe they've used competitor products, or maybe they've never had an individual product to do this. So we'll sometimes find our customers who were just using a Word document and a spreadsheet and old-fashioned designs on pen and paper. So we've got quite a diverse capability of user when they come into Cyncly. And onboarding was taking quite a lot of time for the company to produce, putting a lot of effort into it, and it wasn't ideal for our customers. So they're often small and medium-sized businesses, and trying to dedicate an amount of time just to invest in this product is quite a big ask sometimes, because really what they want to do is they want to be selling kitchens and bathrooms and not spending all the time playing with what we think is really great software. And Bally has first-hand experience in this because I poached her from the support team into our team a few years ago. And you were doing some of the onboarding telephone calls, weren't you?
Yeah, so the onboarding phone calls were being scheduled, and sometimes people were not able to make it because something else more pressing had turned up for them. And they were quite time consuming as well. So, they could take 45 minutes up to an hour sometimes if they were experiencing some issues or they hadn't actually downloaded the product yet. So then there'd be a lag and you'd have to wait for certain things to be done before onboarding them. So, yeah, it was quite time consuming.
Was it more like manual for you? So they would get in contact with you. Was it like through phone, or did you have like a chat?
It was a phone and and screen sharing.
Yeah, it's like super manual, and and you guys probably have already like some documentation as well, and then you're like, "Oh, can you just check the documentation? You'll find the answer there." But no, people want to get their answer right off the bat.
They do, yeah. They
Right.
need a bit of hand holding.
Yeah. And how would you say is for Flex, let's say specifically, the complexity? So if someone brand new just logged in, do you think that they would be able, like without having any of the onboarding material, just as a product, how complex would you think it is, like from 0 to 10, 10 being like very?
Ooh, that's a tricky one to answer.
Does it depend on the use case?
Very much. It's certainly one of the products that you could use 25% of our product really well and not really concern yourself with the rest of it because you do the one task that you want. Or you could be a slightly bigger business and you want to really push the project management to the limits and you really want to use 100% of it. I think maybe someone who's trying to use 100% of it and put a whole customer workflow and the whole customer journey through our product, I would say if I'm scoring it out of 10, maybe it's going to be something like an 8 to get to that.
Wow.
I don't want to say that the product is really, really difficult and hard to use, but if you do want to put it in every corner of that customer workflow, you want to record the customer coming into your showroom for the first time, look at the lead, look at the customer, give them a quote, give them an order and invoice it and do all of those things. It's naturally a little bit complicated because it touches a few different departments in that business. So they all need to be a little bit involved.
Yeah, and there's many steps that they would have to understand how to navigate even before that, right? As you said, there's lots of like different actions that they can take in order to kind of become, or let's say have that like full adoption. So yeah, it would be something. Bali, what do you think?
Yeah, no, similar to what Dan said, because there will be, if you're not an admin user, you are just a designer, you're just going to be concerned with maybe like, creating the contact, making a project and seeing it through its journey. But you wouldn't necessarily be involved with any of the, number ranges and things like that, that an admin person would be more concerned with to make sure, invoicing was done correctly and, purchase orders were done correctly and things like that.
Do you guys have multiple teams that would work on Flex, or is it usually just like one person that's in charge of it?
It depends on the size of the business, wouldn't you think, Dan?
Yes, yeah, very much. You might find that there's a lead designer who's in charge of it and will look after their team of designers. Or, as I said, if the product is used in other areas of the business, then you'd have other people. So maybe the IT person for that business is interested, and the lead salesperson, and maybe some regional sales managers, and maybe an accountant as well, and maybe someone in charge of purchasing. Then you've got quite a team that you want to manage the access to on Flex.
Yeah, and then usually for Bali, like for example, like for your experience back when you were working with like the support team, for like onboarding them, of course it would depend on what they're trying to look for, right? Or like what their role is, and on average, like how long did it usually take for you to onboard them?
It would depend on the size of their company and also their background as well, I would say, because if they wanted to kind of drill down into all of the details and be like, oh no, I want my invoice numbers to begin with XYZ and I want to set this up and I want to add all of these users, then it could take quite long. But if it was someone who was just more interested in, doing the designing and then having a database that's centralized, which is what Flex can give you, then it was a bit quicker. So it just really depended on the use case of the customer.
Yeah, and you guys, as you said, like Dan, at some point you guys were getting like lots of like you guys were getting like a lot of load, right, on like the support and understanding, like for the onboarding part, and then that's where Bali kind of transferred to like the documentation team. Can you guys tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what was, for example, like what was the trigger, let's say, for being like, okay, no, we need some support, we need to kind of put some information and power in this onboarding process. And at what point were you also thinking about like, okay, maybe we need something that's inside the app that would help with the onboarding? How did you come across user guiding, and what did that look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not something that I've considered for a little while since we actually did it and we start to begin implementing user guiding. So I also previously worked in support, and I had conversations and friends with colleagues in support. So we knew about the increasing pressure of support and the unsatisfactory manual telephone calls and screen sharing and that material. And it was actually while I was using another piece of software, which I've forgotten, and I was experiencing an onboarding walkthrough, a little user guide. And there was just a moment where I thought, well, now we're not just dealing with a desktop design application, we have all the cloud-enabled features in a web browser. This is something that we could utilize. So I think the answer to your question is just probably the culmination in the unsatisfactory way that we were doing it, or the old-fashioned way that we were doing it.
And it's like you came across another tool, that like another application that was using a lot of this, and of course you probably had reflected on it as your personal experience where, oh, this kind of looks like something that would help us with information, sharing information with that user to help them navigate. Just reflecting on it from like a personal experience, then you're probably like, okay, maybe this is something that we can implement as well.
Yeah, and I can't remember what it was I was doing. It was probably nothing to do with work, but I was just following a little guide about how to get used to a piece of software, and thought, this looks
really interesting.
We should explore it, and that's what began the journey.
Yeah, it's very interesting. First of all, that both of you kind of came from like a support background, because you saw that need, or let's say it was like a barrier for the users. And it's a very similar thing for me as well, where as I had shared with you before going live here, that I started off with the sales team, and then we saw that a lot of people are also like, they're coming in, they're not understanding what the tool does or like what user guiding does. So that's where I also kind of like transitioned into marketing, because maybe we needed a better way to showcase what user guiding actually does from a marketing or product marketing perspective. So you kind of have this background, extra skills, that you accumulate, and then based off of the needs that you see in the company, that's where you kind
there was probably some other people can relate to this. When we were doing the manual onboarding calls, we also had a little set of onboarding videos that were recorded. So continuous screen recordings and narration over the top, and you can probably predict what I'm going to say. As soon as the developer goes and changes one little feature, all of your videos become out of date, and they are really time consuming to create. So we were feeling the pressure of having to go and update all of that again, and it wasn't very efficient in our time.
Was that from the support side or from the in the documentation side?
That was something that had moved into documentation. So we had those videos, and of course the product has developed a lot, especially as this was a very new product to us a few years ago. So it was hard to keep up with that.
So tell me a little bit of what you've tried before moving with UserGuiding. So you, as you said, you tried the videos, you probably had some, did you guys have a knowledge base or some documentations as well, right?
Yeah, do you want to speak about the knowledge base for a sec, Bally?
Yeah, so we've got support centers across all of our different products. And so in there, we host the videos that Dan was speaking about. And we also used to use Storyline to make interactive click-throughs and kind of guide the user, again, how to use the product and the different stages that they can go through. But yeah, mostly it was kind of support articles. So that, the how-to questions, how do I do this in the software? How do I do that in the software? And they're kind of hosted on our support centers, and we've still got that material and we're updating it regularly, so it is still there, because we've still got desktop applications that can't have user guiding, so we do need both things, we found.
Yeah, definitely, fair enough. And who was tasked with looking for an onboarding solution? Was it you, Bali, or Dan?
That was Dan.
Yeah, that was me. So I'd forgotten about the click-through e-learning content that we produced. So that was almost a halfway step, wasn't it, for us, between video, which is a very passive experience outside of the app, and then the click-through, which was sort of a series of screenshots, so it felt like you were using the app, but you're not really using the app, to then the evolution of looking for a tool like user guiding that actually you're clicking the buttons and you're in your app and you can make the changes that you want to make.
Yeah, definitely. I do have a cool question that I'm also very intrigued to learn from our audience as well, which is, I'll start it here. So now that you've implemented, we'll get into the, we'll deep dive into your use case, but now that you've implemented user guiding, and of course you can get some metrics for that, so what metrics do you care about most when it comes to onboarding success? And I'll share some of the options here as well so you guys can see. So you have the time to value, the number of support tickets, feature adoption rate, or customer satisfaction scores.
Yeah,
what do you guys have to say?
That's a really good list. So what we're measuring now in user guiding is the percentage of weekly active users who are active in using our guides. So the actual usage of those guides. And historically, time to value out of your list there is something that we were tracking. So we could see when a user had created a certain number of designs, we could think, oh, they've got 3 kitchen designs, so they're competent in the software, they're getting some value out of it. They're considered, an onboarded user, if you like. So for us, historically, it's always been time to value. But now that we can with user guiding, we're interested to see, well, how are they getting to that time to value? So we track the percentage that they're following our onboarding guides and the completion rate, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later.
Awesome. And from our audience here, what they've been sharing is 40% of them are also they look at the feature adoption rate. So yeah, it's user onboarding and feature adoption. It's basically, it really goes hand in hand, where the first step is that user onboarding, getting them to just, it's the first nudge and getting them to start testing and start navigating. But then of course at the end, you want them to adopt it. But then of course, as you said, the time to value, you want them to kind of learn the product as soon as possible, because people's attention spans are, becoming less and less as we move on. Perfect. So you've implemented user guiding and you've been creating a lot of guides, I saw. So maybe you guys can tell me a little bit also about, first of all, you've been using, I can share some screenshots here as well, where you've implemented some checklists and some guides with some visuals, which is very impressive. And I love the theme that you guys have here. Bali, was it you that created the themes? for it?
We actually have a UI UX team who kind of set up the Cyncly theme, so that all of our material looks consistent across all kind of platforms that we're on. So
That's
yeah,
very
it was
cool.
created by them, but then like the images and the GIFs and things are produced by us.
So tell me, which tool did you start off with? I'm guessing it was the guides, right?
Yes, yeah. So we started off with the guides, built a resource center, and then put the checklists within the resource center. But then we also triggered it on first show. So when somebody is logged in for the very first time, they get a welcome GIF, kind of telling them a little bit about the program and how they can access the help.
Did you start off with knowing what you wanted to implement, or was it something that you just wanted to maybe begin with a first small step and then later on, you optimized it based off of?
Yeah, I think our first priority was the onboarding flow. So it was kind of like we've got two different sets of users that you'd need to onboard. So like an admin person who's going to be doing all of the back end stuff and making sure the company is set up correctly within Flex. And then you've got the other users, which are just predominantly going to be like designers and other users that need to know the information within the flow. So they just need to be onboarded and shown how, what different areas there are, like the dashboard, the contacts page, the projects page, and how they can use those for themselves. So there's two different flows, which is why there are so many guides, because we've got different checklists for both types of customer, basically.
And later on, did you begin with you never began with like a general one, like you already had this idea that you wanted to segment because of your like different user types?
Yeah, it was quite important that we could segment the users and split it in that way, because what they can see is determined by their access. So if you're an admin user, you see the settings. If you're not an admin user, you don't see them. So yeah, that was very important, the segmentation.
And the image that we have here is it's the admin one, right? So for that
Yes,
checklist.
that's an admin checklist. So initially we only had it in the resource center, but then because they weren't being completed all of the time, we kind of made it a little bit more in their face and put it on the bottom of the dashboard, the landing page when they first open it, to show them that they've got some incomplete tasks. And we found that really helped with them actually completing all of the tasks. It's quite visual, isn't it? They get a green tick when they've completed it, and then when it's all the tasks are complete, then it disappears. So
yeah, it's the gamification of it.
yeah. So it was it's a process learning, isn't it?
That's amazing. How long have you guys been using user guiding for and implementing it this way?
We've just gone past our first year anniversary, I think, so we're just into the second year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
1 year anniversary.
It went quickly. It went very quickly.
Yeah. And how did that affect, like, what kind of impact did you see?
So we obviously measuring quite a few metrics, but we started very gradually, as Bally said, I think probably because I'm naturally quite cautious, and I was pitching this to product managers and we needed their buy-in, and we didn't want to cover their application in loads and loads of pop-ups. So we were very gradual. So we tracked the views of the guides, and we could see when they were really, really new, people were going for it, and then there'd be a little bit of a drop-off. Maybe the guides were used a little bit less. So we saw that quickly tail off. And that's when Bally suggested, well, we can use the checklist and we can increase the visibility. So we really ramped it up a little bit at a time. Here's a help button, but maybe not everyone is clicking it. So here's a checklist. So now you'll see it a little bit more. And then as soon as we did that, we started the impact was that more of those guides were being followed. In turn, obviously, we're working with customer success and support to see if the number of onboarding support related calls have decreased, because our onboarding time that we're booking, that obviously became free time to use in support, because that was not being booked anymore for those products. So we immediately replaced that telephone call and that diary invite for those small and medium-sized businesses.
And it wasn't taking much of your time to create either, right?
No, in fact, I've made some notes, and one of the really important ones here was how quickly we got up to speed with using user guiding. It was a real strong selling point for me, was thinking, oh, I could show this to anyone in the team. It's got a really nice WYSIWYG editor so that you can come in and author those guides, and then those in the team, Bally can tell you, got up to speed very quickly and was able to start producing guides to test probably within a few days of trialing it, weren't we?
Yeah, it was all very easy to pick up, I would say, and quite intuitive. Like, you kind of like knew that when you press in that, this is the kind of area you can do certain things in. So yeah, and it's quite easy to duplicate them as well. So cloning them, because we're on two different design softwares are using the same platform, but then we have to tailor it slightly differently for either one. So again, we like segmented it, cloned them, changed them. So it was quite nice and easy to do that.
And how many people are like, how many team members do you have that are working on, providing, let's say, the guides, or that have access to user guiding?
So the core couple on the Flex product is Bally and Sue, just two people. And there's a third colleague, Luke, who is starting to implement this for a different application that's not yet live. In fact, that's going live next month. So there's 3 people who probably touch user guiding nearly daily. And that, I think, will grow because we're looking at adding more of those cloud features to our other products, and that will bring in more Flex, which in turn will bring in more user guiding content.
That's so cool. Like, I love seeing that the value that you guys are getting it, because the solution basically is, and I really, like, not in a salesy way, I wholeheartedly like believe in this, where it's such a easy kind of to use solution that solves a lot of problems for you guys, but also for the end users as well, for your users. It's like a win-win situation. So I love seeing that. And when you guys are creating, like, how do you decide, when to create a new guide versus updating an existing one? Have you had this discussion or idea before?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm going to let Bally answer a little bit of that, because we do meet on a sort of regular basis to evaluate what we're going to do next, don't we?
Yeah, so we meet kind of like on a monthly basis to kind of evaluate and look at stats and see where things are kind of going. Because most of our guides are onboarding guides, we kind of make sure that they're still relevant and the flow is still correct, but we haven't gone back to change any drastically because they are kind of being followed. There's quite a high completion rate on them. The ones that we are like getting a bit more experimental with is like when I join these kinds of webinars and I see how other people are using it, I kind of poach some ideas.
Yeah.
So, poach the ideas of using hotspots, which has gone down really well. We've used a banner to advertise a new feature, which then launched into a guide to show them how to use the new feature. So that was quite cool to do. And the next thing that I'm bugging Dan about and excited to start actually using is the product updates, because with Flex platform, their releases don't happen with a download, which is what our design applications have. So, there's a release that, customer has to go and download it and update. Whereas with the Flex platform, an update is pushed and it's live for everybody on a specific date. So now I'm just kind of thinking that, when things like that happen, we can document our other applications differently on the support center to how we would a Flex new feature and have a product update for it instead. So yeah, it's kind of a learning
How
curve.
have you been releasing, like when you're launching a new feature or having any changes? And this is actually a great segue to like another poll question that I have, which is when you launch a new feature, what's your like go-to method to get users to try it? So for example, as you mentioned, like you can probably have a guide or a banner, or maybe if you guys do like an email announcement as well, have some release notes documents going back, or there's this other one of like, we hope that they notice it themselves. And of course it depends also like how big the change is.
Yeah, so I think it has mostly been an email announcement and the release notes is how we've done it previously. But yeah, we are now starting to do the in-app guides or a banner, and then hopefully use the product updates feature within user guiding.
Amazing. Perfect. And so a little bit about like the guides. Is there a guide that you saw that had like the biggest impact on your users? Not in specific, or was it like the whole, maybe the whole flow?
Yeah, I don't think I could single one out from the data that we look at and we review all the time. We really are concentrating on those that you saw in the checklist because they have the biggest impact, because that's where the most work is for an admin user to set everybody up. So I think it's probably that collection, those 4 in the checklist, are the most important, because if somebody can get that set up, then they can start really benefiting from everything else they'll get from our software.
You ensure that they've gone through and they've clicked through and they're aware of the functionalities that they're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've added the checklist to the resource center as well, which I wanted to touch base on because the resource center personally is my favorite user guiding tool, and I would love to like also understand more of how you've been using it, because you also have like, I think maybe 10 resource centers that you have active, if I'm not mistaken. And so you're probably also like segmenting it either based off of users or maybe pages, right?
Yeah, so it's mostly segmented for users so that we get the right product and the right location for a user. We'll shortly come on to localizing it and producing other translations in a moment. But yeah, the resource center was actually my favorite way to organize content, because I felt that it was a way to have everything in one place. And I really think that was a good start, even though we quite quickly realized that users won't naturally click the help button to open it on their own. But for me, that was okay, because then we started to build on it and we added a few hotspots to increase visibility, and we added that checklist to increase the visibility. So I still like the organization and the in-app access that resource center provides for all the content we've got.
How do you choose the resources that you want to add, and what kind of resource? Because you can add, as you said, like the checklist and guides and some external links, maybe documentations. Um, are they all general kind of support that you would add, or as you said, like, is there something in specific that is different for different user types or different pages?
Different user types will have different design software applications, so some of those are specifically targeted. So you can see a couple of external links there that go off to our support center, or our knowledge base, which we've also plugged in, and users can search and can consume that material, which we find really, really useful. As for how we decide, we really mapped out the onboarding flow, didn't we? And that's how we came up with what's in the checklist. And I guess one day we will look further than just onboarding, and we will have the new feature guides a little bit more prevalent. But we're still relatively new to that. Bally spoke about the banner. We released that was only 4 or 5 weeks ago that we did that. That was our first new feature guide.
For the how often are you guys like releasing new features or updates?
Or what would you say, Bally? Because it's sometimes features are behind a feature flag, so they're not a wide release.
Yeah,
Quite
so
constantly.
indeed the problem, can't it, sometimes? But it's for specific either product or user type.
Do you mainly use user guiding for when it comes to user engagement or sharing documentation, let's say, or do you also use like some external tools? Let's say, what does the like documentation system that you guys have, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our knowledge base, because it pre-existed before we had user guiding, and we've got a large support department using it, our knowledge base is actually a Zendesk knowledge base, and we've got 10 or 15 of those for the different products. So it was super good that we could plug that into user guiding. I know you can make a knowledge base specifically in user guiding, but I think we've got some other use cases that we can use that. But yeah, the core of what we do for content is hosted in there, and we aim to link to it from that resource center, like you saw. And we're also keen to use one of the other features to put a link in one of our articles that talks about getting started, that can actually trigger the guide in that user's application. We haven't done that yet, but we're really keen to join the dots. So for
Yeah.
us, it was not about duplicating, but it was about linking what we're doing in that knowledge base with what you can do in the application.
Yeah, and I find that it's such a niche kind of use where a lot of people aren't aware of this as well. And I love talking about this because it's like in user guiding with a guide, you can connect an article. What people don't know, like in the article, you can also connect a guide, like and trigger a guide. So it's definitely like you want to add as let's say as many resources because lots of different people have different ways of learning. Some of them, are like visual. They prefer maybe reading or watching a video. Some of them are more like action oriented as well. So of course, like best, but kind of providing the options for the users and how they would like to learn is something that's I think it really differentiates between like a mediocre support documentation to this like real unique user experience they can provide.
Yeah, Bally was really keen to offer that choice on a lot of guides, weren't you? So you split them between seeing and doing.
Yeah, so on a lot of the guides, before you trigger it, you can either start the guide, which will just show you a GIF of all the steps being completed so that, you can kind of make it straight in your own mind and do it that way. Or you can actually trigger a guide, which will do the step-by-step instructions. Just because people learn in different ways, and I think, people take in it, consume information in different ways nowadays. A lot of it is visual now because of social media, and they just want to be shown and then left to it and doing it in their own time.
For sure. And how do you balance between creating like an interactive guide with like traditional documentation? Or would you, as you said, like would you have kind of both?
Yeah, we're at the stage, I think, that we would want both, and we would want to support both of those and reference one from the other. We often end a guide with one of the slide examples that says, now you can read all the detail here. So the guide for us is about increasing the visibility and getting them to start to experience it. But if you really need to understand some long detail, we don't want more than 6 or 7 steps. We will refer over to the article, so we're still article heavy.
Yeah, this is one of the best practices that we provide as well. And if you saw from like when you create a guide, it says, it's better to have it maximum like 7 steps or 8 steps. So yeah, just keeping it a little bit because some of the other uses that I've seen, like some of them have like 25 steps, which is not the best. Yeah, not the best user experience, but it also depends, right? Because it's a very, as I said, like very versatile tool that you can have. And how do you balance also between like not bombarding the users with guides or announcements and with having them maybe like encouraging that like self-discovery as well. So you had mentioned, for example, you saw that in the resource center, if when you just had the resource center, you weren't getting a lot of interaction with the checklist, but then you added the checklist externally. And did you have it like also pop up as soon as they first log in? And what were some things that you implemented for that?
Yeah, we had quite a few discussions between our trio, didn't we? Because we're always cautious to not bombard users, but we also have our agenda to make sure everyone who possibly can exploit this really helpful material so that you can get there. So we have many discussions between the three of us. What do you think is acceptable in your opinion? What do you think? Is this too much? Is this too little? We don't really want more than 2 things on the screen, like the checklist or the resource center at the same time. So perhaps we're overly cautious, but we hope we're easing our users into the idea that these things on screen are really helpful.
Definitely. No, and then you can also reflect that, as you said, Dan, like from your personal experience, when you go and you use a platform, for your case, as a client, then some of them just force you to navigate, let's say, a new update where enhance like you're actually like, no, I just want to do my own thing for like I don't want to waste more than 5 seconds. Yeah, I get that. We do have a question. Here, let me share it. Does the resource center replace the normal technical support center / knowledge base? What would you say?
That's a great question. For us, no, it's an exact complement. So the resource center links, and the little search box that we have at the top, a user can type in a term there, And actually, all of the answers to the matching articles are being served from our external knowledge base, but it can be consumed inside the sidebar. So I'd describe the resource center as a little gateway, a little viewer to our knowledge base. So I probably answered the question for you that you could answer your own
Well,
project.
anything you'd like to add to that?
No, yeah, it's just exactly like Dan said. It saves duplication. It saves you having to put everything in one place. If you've already got it, you can, link it in, and it's really nice interface as well. So it sets out the article, and any material and media that you have in there comes up in the sidebar. So it's a great user experience, I believe.
When I used to explain the resource center, the easiest way to do it was like anything that you've had, like all, as you said, like it's this centralization, right? Your users, they're most active when they're on your platform. So, and of course, you would have like all your resources and documentation and help material sitting outside of the application. The resource center is just the best way to just like bring it all in into this like one place, and it doesn't even, it's just like a little tab, so it doesn't take any space. And recently, if you saw, like we've revamped the resource center as well, so this way you can add like the product updates in it and the knowledge base, and even have like the AI assistant there as well. So making it just like this whole like central little tab whenever they would like to access it. So that was a really great way of explaining it, guys. So Courtney, I hope you found the answer helpful. Since implementing user guiding, right? It's been a year, and I got in touch with you guys even like at the end of summer, but you wanted to kind of test it out a little bit more, which I love because then you come in with all the experience that you have now. Have you noticed any impact on the other teams, like for example, like the support teams or the product team, when it comes to like their workload or their, let's say, workflow?
Yeah, we're working with them to track things like the support call types for onboarding, how many calls relate to things that we know are covered in those guides. So we're obviously looking for those to decrease, which then frees up our technical support to do other technical support tasks rather than the repetitive things. So that's the biggest impact on our training and onboarding teams. Which should also help the support teams, because if they've been trained and onboarded, then there should be fewer overlapping support calls. So we track those. Support call types is really what we're after, or tickets, to use the right phrase.
And is it that, like, for example, like by the end of the month, the highest number of questions or inquiries that you guys get, this is where you kind of brainstorm what we're able to do to kind of decrease those questions?
Yeah, that's exactly how we approach our knowledge base as well, actually, looking at those queries that customers are asking now and making sure that we're serving the best answer that we can and that it's really comprehensive. So yeah, we look each month about what users are doing.
Was there any like surprising feedback that you got from like other teams or users after introducing user guiding on the platform?
Oh, that's a really good question. Does anything spring to mind, Ali?
No, I think we got lots of positive feedback. I can't remember anything else. I think it was a lot of product managers were thinking it's much needed to have it in app help.
Were you thinking, I mean, this is maybe a little bit more towards like the product managers as well, but like, because before user guiding, the kind of standard was you would have like developers create these types of like tours. Was it something that, was something that maybe you've considered, or were you like, no, we don't want any like developer resources going to this because also the platform changes a lot? How was that process?
Dan knows more about that than I do.
Yeah, it's funny. The Flex platform did have a little onboarding wizard that was, as you said, built in the traditional sense with the development team, and there'd already been product changes that meant that wizard needed to change a little bit to keep up with the product. So it was quite early days for the company to be building that into the product. So fortunately, we were able to prove quite quickly that user guiding can do that same job and better and more quickly, and without the developers having to do anything other than install the code for us.
Would you say the same, Bali?
Yeah, and I think the product managers actually like the fact that we can react and change to things as quickly as we can without it having to be put into a backlog or into a sprint and things like that. So I think it's been really well received in that sense.
When you create any kind of new material that you want to launch or activate on Flex, do you also like run it by the other teams just to make sure that it looks good, it's good for them, or it does not? Maybe
Yeah, so we have a test platform. So what we try to do is put it out on the test platform, let everybody have a look and play around, and then put it to live after.
awesome. Courtney has another question. Keep them coming, Court. So as a new user, what are the top 3 things do you think I should implement first?
Well, that takes me back to what we were doing just over a year ago, doesn't it? I think it was a guide to explain the guide. So our very first thing was to say, hey, there's a blue help button on the side. If you go here, you've got this really big panel of all the help you need in one place. So I think that was probably the best thing to do first. Maybe I should rewind a little bit and say, decide where the biggest challenge is, and that will then tell you what you want the guide to do for you. For us, it was welcoming a new user, both an admin and a non-admin. What do you think, Bally?
Yeah, I think you've covered it there. So it was kind of building the resource center was one of the first things we did, and put the checklists and the guides within it, and then the links out to external material that we have. Like the release notes and things like that, how they can access training. But yeah, I think having the resource center is probably one of the first most impactful things that you could do. And then, like Dan said, we made our very first login after we'd implemented user guiding to be a GIF to show them, there's this new help. Come and check it out.
Yeah, the resource center is definitely like underrated. It's definitely an underdog when it comes to just that whole user experience, centralized user experience. What are some best practices that you've developed? You've been using user guiding for a year, so I mean, of course, like when you first started, the workflow is gonna look different from like after a year. So what are some of the like best practices that you've developed for like this consistency across your guides and the user experience they wanted to provide?
I'd like to start to answer that with a statistic question, because we're very driven by those. So weekly, we have a look at the usage rate and the completion rate. So at the minute, we're enjoying quite a high completion rate, about over 70% combined across the guides, which we think is good. We put that down to the guides being quite concise, like you said, not usually more than 7 steps. So I think a best practice is to publish it and then watch it and track it and look at the statistics. And then when you see the usage dropping off, maybe there's something you can do to help that. Or if users aren't completing the dashboard in user guiding, would be very good at telling you which guide aren't they completing. And then when you've looked at that guide, you can see, well, which step in the guide do they drop off? So you can be really specific about the content that's in there. So yeah, my number one is definitely use the dashboard and drill into where the good things are and where the areas for improvement are.
Qualitative data,
Yeah.
just data driven actions. What about you, Bali?
Yeah, no, I'd have to second what Dan said. It would be looking at the data and improving where you can improve, and thinking of ways to bring it a little bit more to the forefront, being a bit more obtrusive, like we were with the checklist popping up as soon as they opened. It's a great visual that user guiding gives. And then the other thing is, it's not too in their face, because they can still carry on and do what they want to do within the application, and it just sits there in the bottom corner as a little reminder, like something ticking away in their head, like I've got to get back to that.
If you need any help, I'm here, just by the way, FYI.
Yeah.
It's a very like parent kind of style, where it's like, yeah, I don't want to tell you what to do, but if you if you need any help, if you need any guidance, for like maybe this is a little bit of a similar question, but like for any teams that are just starting off with user guiding, and I would say like also like if there's small teams that have been struggling with, um, increasing maybe a little bit of that user adoption, or time to value, and they want to help with the user onboarding, what is like the number one tip that you would give to like anyone just like starting off, they're just starting the trial, other than looking at the data, where do you think it would be kind of a great starting point to get started?
I would say to map out the journey that you want the customer to take, and then start planning your guide accordingly and your checklists. And then it all kind of flows from there. But have a very, deep dive into the flow that a customer needs to take or they should take, and you want them to go down that route.
Like a roadmap.
Yeah.
Definitely. What would you say, Dan?
Yeah, I would say if your application supports it and it's relevant, that user segments have been really powerful for us, because I feel that if the guide or the first thing that a user is seeing is very specific to their role, then that's more likely to be followed. So we found the user segments really, really powerful. Although I have to say, sometimes it takes a meeting of three of us to talk about exactly defining what that segment is. Like, do I need the first interaction date or the last interaction date? Or do I want to know when their database was created? So you can put all that criteria together to define this is a new user who is an admin who has been in the application less than 2 weeks. And then you can be really specific about the things that you present to that user.
For sure, like the more specific you are, and in the more personalized you make it, it's gonna have a higher chance of it being achieving great results.
Yeah.
So we're reaching a little bit the end of the webinar, and I do have like just two more questions, and just out of curiosity as well, just to wrap things up. Are there any areas where you had mentioned that you're also like planning on like implementing, you're planning on to implement user guiding on other applications as well? Are there any other areas that you'd like to expand the use of user guiding? For example, like we also have other features, surveys. Have you been getting any feedback, or how do you envision your continuing usage with user guiding?
Yeah, actually, surveys is definitely one thing. We're currently serving a third-party survey for our customer success colleagues, because they created the survey in parallel to the work we're doing, which is really good and giving them some answers. But selfishly, we would like to implement a survey specifically about someone's onboarding experience, and we'd like to use the built-in user guiding survey for that, have a 5-star rating and the ability to type a comment in, because then we feel we get the best of both worlds. If someone has something to say, they can do it. If you just want to click a star, that's fine. You can do that really quickly. So we would like to implement that later this year.
And you can segment them after, right? Like based off of their answers as well, and get some data for that.
Yeah, like it, definitely. Bally, you mentioned the product updates feature, didn't you?
Yeah, so product updates feature is one that I'm hoping to start using, just because of the complexity of the product.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't take much time, right? And you also, I don't know if you know this, but there's also like boosters where it's not like a guide, but it's like a slide of, as you said, like a link to kind of open it up and kind of read more about it. So yeah, that's very interesting. And you've talked about this a little bit, like what's next in implementing the onboarding and self-service, and you guys seem to have like a really solid structure, and I'm very excited to see what you guys come up with. Also, hopefully by next year as well, do like a 2-year anniversary webinar.
Yeah.
Perfect. And yeah, is there anything else that you guys like to add as final remarks for anyone that's watching and looking to implement user guiding now?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to start, and then you can start small, and the tool makes it really easy for you to grow with that, and you can try something else, and you can watch it, and then you can stop it, or you can try something different.
That's it. That's great advice. Bali?
Yeah, I think play around with it on the test platform, get feedback from everybody, and test everything out before pushing it to live.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your insightful discussion and sharing your wisdom and even like the screenshots that look really amazing. And everyone that's watching as well, Courtney and Yazan and everyone else in the chat. Thank you so much for also sharing what your answers in the polls. We'll send out a recording after the session, and when we end the session as well, it will take you to a webinar feedback form, so this way you can also provide any feedback or any future webinar topics that you'd like us to have. And yeah, thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank